Seattle's skyline glistens behind Gavin Reed, a wealthy food CEO with an empire built on flavor. Yet his life is tasteless without the woman he let go. One sunny afternoon, at a bustling local bake fair, a bold 10-year-old boy named Leo shouts, "Dad, taste this!" holding out a cookie with eager eyes. Gavin freezes. Something in that voice cuts deep. The cookie? It's the same recipe he and Julia once dreamed of turning into a business. And the boy? He's got Gavin's stubborn chin. Haunted by that encounter, Gavin buys Leo's cookies every day, trying to piece together a past he thought he'd buried. The truth begins to unravel. Julia never stopped loving him, but Gavin's sister Carol did everything to keep them apart, including hiding letters and lies. As secrets bake into the open, Gavin must choose. Sign a billion-dollar deal or skip it to fund a baking class that means everything to Leo. With one bite of Leo's cookie, hope returns, and so does love. But when Gavin uncovers Carol's betrayal, everything boils over. Can this broken CEO become the father Leo never knew and the partner Julia once believed in? Or is it too late? Watch this story of family, forgiveness, and a single homemade cookie that changed everything. Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold. The stainless steel gleamed beneath the morning lights at Reed Foods HQ, where Gavin Reed stood overlooking rows of prep stations through a glass wall. On the surface, everything was perfect. The latest protein bar line was exceeding projections. Marketing teams were buzzing. Forklifts beeped in the loading bay below. And yet, Gavin felt nothing. He adjusted his cufflinks, hand-stitched, imported, then turned back to his office. Framed magazine covers lined the wall. Seattle's Food King, the flavor empire. But the only photo that mattered wasn't there. It sat locked in a drawer. Julia, smiling at a summer fair, flower on her nose. He hadn't spoken her name in a decade. Later that afternoon, Gavin found himself walking near Greenview Park. The city buzzed, sunshine bouncing off stroller handles and street vendor signs. He wasn't sure why he was there. Habit, maybe, or hunger for something not on a menu. A crowd was gathering by the bake fair canopy. Kids selling cupcakes, cookies, bread shaped like animals. Gavin's eyes wandered until they landed on a booth marked Leo's Bakes. A 10-year-old boy stood behind the table, dark curls messy, confidence unshaken. "Hey, mister," the boy called out. "You gotta taste this one." Gavin stopped, amused. The boy held up a thick, golden cookie. "It's got sea salt and dark chocolate, my own recipe." People around turned. Gavin stepped closer. The boy grinned, then shouted, louder this time, "Dad, taste this!" Everything went still. Gavin blinked. "What did you say?" The boy tilted his head. "I said, taste this. You look like someone who knows food." But the hesitation in the boy's eyes said more. Gavin's chest tightened. That face, it tugged at something buried. He took the cookie slowly, bit into it. Crisp edges, soft center, a hint of almond. "Wow," he murmured. "Yeah," the boy said proudly. "I made it myself. For my mom." Gavin stared. The flavor, Julia's signature twist, a recipe they'd once scribbled on a napkin during a thunderstorm in Boston. No one else would have thought of adding almond extract. "What's your name?" Gavin asked. "Leo," the boy replied, boxing more cookies for a woman nearby. "My mom taught me everything. She's the best baker in Seattle, but she doesn't sell them. Says people don't always buy heart." Gavin managed to smile. "She sounds smart." "Too smart," Leo muttered. "Won't even let me give out samples. Says we have to earn it, not give it away." A woman in her 30s called to Leo from a bench, waving gently. Long auburn hair, sunglasses, the shape of her jaw. Julia. Gavin's feet locked. The woman didn't look his way. She had her arm resting protectively across a picnic basket, her posture guarded. "Is that your mom?" Gavin asked. Leo nodded. "Yeah. She doesn't really like strangers, though, especially guys in suits." Gavin exhaled, the taste of the cookie still on his tongue. He pulled out his wallet and handed the boy a 20. "I'll be back for more tomorrow." Leo lit up. "You got it. Same time, same booth." As Gavin walked away, his heart pounded like a freight train. That cookie, Julia's cookie, had found its way back to him, and the boy, his boldness, his timing. That word, Dad, coincidence? Or something deeper? Behind him, Leo shouted to another customer, "These are made with care, not just sugar." Gavin glanced back once. Julia was now walking away with Leo, her hand on his shoulder, their silhouettes framed by the afternoon sun. He stood still, clutching the empty cookie wrapper in his hand. It felt heavier than it should have. A small grease stain bloomed across the folded edge. And just beneath it, crumbs. Like a trail leading back to something he thought he'd lost forever. Tomorrow, he'd return, but not for cookies, for truth the next morning. Gavin Reed sat behind his sleek office desk, fingers tapping against a cold ceramic mug. The cookie wrapper from the park, grease-stained and crumpled, rested beside his laptop. He hadn't thrown it away. Couldn't. He was supposed to be reviewing the product designs for a new snack line, but his mind kept returning to the boy's voice. "Dad, taste this." It wasn't just the word. It was the way the kid had said it. Casual, confident, like he knew. A knock at the door. Carol stepped in without waiting. "Morning, little brother," she chimed, pushing her sunglasses into her platinum blonde hair. "You ready for the investor lunch?" Gavin didn't look up. "I'm not going." Carol raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you skip a chance to dazzle people with truffle sliders and fake charm?" Gavin finally looked at her. "Do you remember Julia?" Carol blinked, then smiled too quickly. "Wow, that's a name from the attic." "I saw her yesterday." Carol's smile faltered. "Seriously?" "She was at the park," Gavin said slowly, watching her closely. "With a boy. His name is Leo. He sells cookies." Carol shifted. "You sure it was her?" "Same hair, same voice, same cookie recipe." He paused. "She looked guarded." Carol moved to the window, arms crossed. "You walked away, Gavin. What did you expect? Roses?" He leaned forward. "Did you ever talk to her after we split?" She turned, expression unreadable. "I might have sent her a letter, told her you weren't ready. You were building a company. Kids didn't fit into the plan." Gavin stood. "Did she write back?" Carol shrugged. "She probably moved on. Let it go." But something in her tone was off. Too quick, too rehearsed. "I'm going back today," Gavin said. "To the park?" He nodded. "I need to know who that boy is." Carol's voice was suddenly sharp. "Be careful, Gavin. You're not the only one with a lot to lose here." That afternoon, Gavin returned to Greenview Park. This time, he wore jeans and a navy windbreaker. No suit, no staff. Just him. The bake fair was smaller today. Wind rustled the tents. Leo's booth was still there, bright sign, crooked table, half-empty tray. "Hey," Gavin said gently. Leo looked up. "Hey, you came back." Gavin smiled. "Of course. I've been thinking about that cookie all day." Leo beamed. "I made a new batch. Want to try the oatmeal chocolate one?" "Absolutely." He handed Gavin a cookie, then leaned closer. "You look less serious today. Is that a good thing?" "Totally." Leo grinned. "People who smile more get more flavor out of food. That's what Mom says." "Your mom," Gavin said, pretending to browse the tray. "She here today?" Leo pointed. "On the bench, reading. She doesn't like crowds." Gavin glanced across the park. Julia sat with a paperback in hand, her body angled away. She hadn't seen him yet. You help her a lot? Leo nodded proudly. We do everything together, except the boring stuff, like taxes. Gavin laughed. You're a good son. Thanks. Then, Leo reached under the table and pulled out a napkin. A rough drawing was scrawled in pencil, 2 people beside a cookie stand. 1 figure wore a tie. I made this, Leo said. That's me. That's the guy from yesterday. Gavin's breath caught. Why'd you draw him? Leo shrugged. I don't know. He looked like he was missing something, like a part of his face was sad. Gavin swallowed. That's very honest. I draw stuff to figure out how I feel, Leo said. Sometimes it works better than words. The drawing shook in Gavin's hands. A tie, a cookie, a boy. It wasn't just a sketch, it was a mirror. He glanced back toward Julia, still reading, still closed off. Leo, Gavin said softly, do you know your dad? Leo blinked. No, Mom says he didn't want us. The words hit Gavin like a fist. I'm sure. That's not the whole story. Leo shrugged. Doesn't matter. Mom's enough. Gavin nodded, heart thudding. I'll be back tomorrow, he said, folding the napkin carefully. Leo smiled. Cool. I'll save you the best one. Gavin walked away, slower this time, the napkin drawing pressed flat against his chest. Tomorrow, he'd speak to Julia. And maybe, finally, ask why she never told him. Gavin stood across the street from the park bench, napkin drawing folded in his pocket. Julia sat there again, sunglasses on, arms crossed over her chest like armor. Leo was busy restocking cookie trays, humming to himself. Gavin's feet moved before his mind caught up. He crossed the path slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. Julia. She froze. Her hand dropped from her sunglasses. She turned her head, just slightly. Hi, Gavin said. It's been a long time. Julia stared at him, her voice low and flat. Didn't realize you were a fan of bake sales. He tried to smile. Turns out I am. She stood, brushing crumbs from her lap. Say what you need to say, Gavin. I just want to talk, he said. Yesterday, he called me Dad. Her lips pressed into a line. He says a lot of things. He's a kid. Julia, is he mine? She looked away, exhaling sharply. You don't get to show up and ask that like it's a business meeting. I'm not here for control, I just... He paused. I need to know the truth. Julia shook her head. You didn't want kids. Your sister told me. You made that crystal clear. Gavin's brow furrowed. I never said that. Well, she snapped, that's not what Carol told me when I found out I was pregnant. His voice lowered. Julia, I never knew. I would have... Stayed? She cut in. You were gone, Gavin. Building your food empire. Your sister said you needed clean press, no scandal, no distractions. The words hit him like a slap. I never got any letters, he whispered. I wrote 4. Julia folded her arms tighter. When you didn't answer, I stopped trying. Gavin's jaw clenched. Julia, I didn't abandon you. I was lied to. She looked at him now, her eyes flashing. That's convenient. Leo deserves more, Gavin said. He deserves the truth. So do I. Julia turned toward the park. Leo was handing a cookie to a little girl, smiling wide. You don't get to walk in and take him from me, she said quietly. I raised him alone. I protected him. I'm not trying to take anything, Gavin said, his voice shaking. I just want a chance to know him, to earn something back. She looked at him, her gaze softer but still wary. You think you can just buy your way in with cookies and charm? No, he said. But maybe I can show up, every day, prove that I'm not the man who walked away, because I never meant to. A long silence passed. Julia finally nodded, just once. You can see him here, at the booth. Nothing more. Okay. Gavin's shoulders eased. Thank you. Before she could change her mind, he turned and walked back toward Leo. Hey, the boy said. "You're early today." Gavin smiled. "Couldn't wait for another cookie." Leo handed him one, still warm. "This one's lemon cardamom. I call it the sunshine bite." Gavin took a bite. The tartness hit first, then a soft wave of spice. "You really made this?" "Yep," Leo said proudly. "Mom helped with the zest part. I always overdo it." "It's amazing," Gavin said, then lowered his voice. "You're talented, Leo." The boy beamed. "Thanks. I want to open a cookie truck someday. Like a food truck, but just cookies. I'll paint it bright yellow." Gavin reached into his jacket, pulled out the folded napkin drawing. "This is special. Thank you for trusting me with it." Leo grinned. "You kept it?" "Of course," Gavin said. "It means a lot." Julia watched them from a distance, arms still folded, but her stance had softened. The drawing had become more than a doodle. It was a quiet promise. And Gavin? He wasn't just showing up for cookies anymore. He was showing up for a boy who didn't know he'd been missed for 10 years. And a woman who needed more than words to believe it. The next day, the park bustled under a wide stretch of sky, scattered with clouds like spilled flour. Gavin returned, not in a rush this time, but steady. A quiet purpose in each step. Leo's booth was already open. His sleeves rolled high, smudges of batter on his cheek. He looked up and grinned. "You're back," he called. "I've got something new today." Gavin smiled. "I wouldn't miss it." Leo reached beneath the table and pulled out a small tin, opening it with dramatic flair. "Brown butter snickerdoodles, but I used chai spice instead of cinnamon. Mom says I'm pushing boundaries." Gavin took one, bit in. The warmth of spice, the caramel edge of butter, it melted into memory. "This is incredible," Gavin said. "Right?" Leo beamed. "I call them cozy circles." Gavin laughed. "You're really building a brand." "That's the plan." Leo looked proud. Then he leaned in, voice softer. "Hey, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you come here every day? I mean, you're, fancy. You don't look like a park guy." Gavin looked at the cookie, then back at Leo. "I guess I'm trying to find something I lost. Or maybe something I never really had." Leo tilted his head, curious. "Like what?" "A chance," Gavin said. "To know someone important." Before Leo could answer, Julia approached. Her expression unreadable, but her presence alone shifted the air. "Leo," she said, "can you check the cooler? I think we're out of the lemon shortbread." "Sure," he said, dashing off. Julia folded her arms. "You're getting comfortable." Gavin nodded slowly. "Just following your rules." She sighed. "He likes you. That scares me. I don't want to confuse him." Julia's voice was low. "Then don't make promises you won't keep." "I haven't made any," Gavin said, "but I'd like to." She looked at him, really looked, years of hurt behind her eyes. "You missed everything," she whispered. "His first steps, his first recipe. He called his first batch snow cookies because we made them during a power outage." Gavin's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, Julia, for all of it." She stared down at the grass. "I used to write you letters, 4 of them. Every one returned unopened." "I never got them," Gavin said. "Carol told me you moved. She said you were done." Julia froze. "Carol? She told you I didn't want kids." "She did," Julia said, her voice darkening. "She said you laughed when you heard I was pregnant, that you were relieved." Gavin's chest twisted. "I never even knew." Leo came back with the cooler. "Found the last box. Want me to start samples?" Julia nodded, still shaken. "Yeah. Go ahead." Leo turned to Gavin. "You're coming tomorrow, right?" Gavin knelt beside him, steady. "If your mom says it's okay, I'll be here. Every day you want me to." Leo smiled and offered him a cookie, one with a small heart pressed in the center. "Try this. I call it Halfway Home." Gavin took it carefully. "Why that name?" "Because it's sweet, but it's not finished yet." Gavin looked up at Julia, who had turned away to rearrange a tray. He took a bite, and something shifted. The cookie, like the boy, was bold, unexpected, filled with hope. And Gavin knew. He wasn't just tasting a cookie. He was tasting what could have been. And maybe, just maybe, what still could be. That evening, Gavin sat alone in his penthouse apartment, lights low, skyline glowing beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. He held the halfway home cookie wrapper in one hand and the napkin drawing in the other, both stained, both sacred. He couldn't sleep. Julia's words kept circling, about the letters, the lies, the pain she'd carried. And Leo had no idea. He thinks I just didn't care. Gavin stood, crossed the room, and pulled open the old storage cabinet by his desk. Inside, tucked in a slim brown envelope, were documents from a decade ago, family trust papers, Carol's hand-marked memos, a letter unopened from an unfamiliar return address. He pulled it out. The handwriting froze him. Julia. His fingers trembled as he peeled it open. Gavin, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Maybe Carol was right. Maybe you don't want this. But I need you to know. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. But I also believe in the version of you I knew once. If you want to talk, I'll be at the cafe on 6th every Saturday. Just come. The letter was dated 9 years ago. He dropped into the couch, crushed. Carol never said a word. She kept this from me. The next day, Gavin returned to the park early. The booths weren't even open yet, but Leo was there, setting up trays with delicate care. "Morning," Gavin said. Leo looked up, surprised. "You're early." "Wanted to help today, if that's allowed." Leo laughed. "Sure, I'm not picky about free labor." Gavin took a tray and began arranging the cookies, mimicking Leo's spacing. "I was thinking about that drawing," Gavin said quietly. "The one with the guy in the tie." "Oh yeah?" Gavin glanced at him. "Is he supposed to be someone real?" Leo shrugged. "Not really. Just someone I imagine sometimes. He's not mad. He listens. He shows up." Gavin swallowed. "Sounds like someone important." Leo smiled. "I guess." Julia arrived moments later, holding 2 thermoses. She paused when she saw Gavin behind the table. "I didn't know you took on a shift," she said dryly. "He insisted," Leo said proudly. "He's good at tray layout. Kinda." Julia raised an eyebrow. "Didn't see that on your resume." "I'm learning," Gavin said gently. "Trying to show up, like you said." She looked at him for a long moment, then handed him one of the thermoses. "Cinnamon tea. Be careful, it's hot." He accepted it with both hands, surprised. "Thanks." They worked in silence for a while, side by side, not speaking, but not avoiding. Finally, Gavin turned to her. "Julia, I found one of your letters." Her hands paused. "What?" "It was buried, unopened, from years ago." Her face paled. "So you did get them?" "No. I think Carol intercepted them, hid them. I believed you were gone." Julia's jaw clenched. "And I believed you didn't want him." "I would have come," Gavin said, voice cracking. "Every Saturday. I would have been there." She blinked hard. "It doesn't change the past." "No," he agreed. "But maybe it changes the next Saturday." A pause. Then Leo returned from handing a cookie to an elderly woman. "Mom, that guy in the suit asked if you made the lemon ones. I told him it was my recipe, but you zested the lemons." Julia smiled faintly. "Good teamwork." Leo grinned. "We're like a mini kitchen army." Gavin looked at the boy, then back at her. "He's amazing." Julia nodded. "He's everything." The moment hung between them. Then Leo reached into his apron and pulled out another sketch. Fresh pencil lines, soft shading. This time, it showed 3 figures behind a cookie table. He handed it to Gavin. "I made a new one. It's all of us." Gavin took the drawing, heart full. "It's not perfect yet," Leo added, "but it's getting there." Gavin met Julia's eyes. "Yeah," he said softly, "it really is." Later that week, Gavin stood in the corridor outside Julia's apartment holding the drawing Leo had given him. He'd studied every pencil stroke, 3 figures behind a cookie stand, smiling. Together. Hopeful. He knocked twice. Julia opened the door cautiously, her apron dusted with flour. "Didn't expect you here," she said. "I know," Gavin replied, "but I wanted to talk. Not in the park, not behind a table." She hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. Inside, the apartment was modest. Warm light, handwritten recipes pinned to the fridge, a stack of cookie tins by the stove. It smelled like brown sugar and lemon zest. Gavin sat on the edge of the couch. "I've been thinking about what Carol said. What she told you." Julia crossed her arms. "It doesn't matter now." "It does to me," Gavin said, "because it wasn't true. I never said I didn't want kids. I never laughed." She met his eyes. "Then why didn't you come?" "Because Carol told me you left," he said. "No explanation. No letters. Just gone. And when I asked, she told me you didn't want to be found." Julia's expression cracked. "She said you called me a liability." Gavin's voice broke. "I didn't. I would have been there. I swear to you." The room filled with silence. Thick, heavy, then Julia sat down across from him. "So, what now? You want to walk in and rewrite the last 10 years? "No," Gavin said softly, "but maybe I can start with the next 10. Just then, Leo burst through the door, backpack swinging, cheeks red from the cold. "Mom, you won't believe—" He stopped short when he saw Gavin. "You're here?" Gavin smiled. "I thought I'd stop by, if that's okay." Leo dropped his bag and nodded. "Yeah. You want to see what I brought home?" "Of course." The boy pulled a worn binder from his bag. Inside, photos of his cookie recipes, food truck designs, and one rough blueprint drawn in marker. Leo's Kitchen School for Kids. "I've been thinking," Leo said, flipping pages, "what if other kids like cookies but don't know how to make them?" "That's a great idea," Gavin said, genuinely impressed. "You want to teach?" "Yeah!" Leo's eyes lit up. "Like a real place. Not fancy. Just ovens and kids and cookies." Gavin looked at Julia. She was quiet, watching. Leo turned back to the binder. "I made space in the back for sponsors. You know, like on sports jerseys. I could put your name there, if you want." Gavin cleared his throat. "I'd be honored." Leo grinned and handed him a folded index card. On it, drawn in pencil, was a cookie with a bite missing. Underneath it, Leo had written, "Mr. Reed, halfway home sponsor." Gavin held it gently. "This means a lot, Leo." Julia stood slowly. "He's serious, you know. When he wants something, he works for it." Gavin nodded. "He gets that from you." Her voice softened. "He also asks questions. A lot of them." "I'll be ready," Gavin said. "Good," she replied, "because he deserves answers." Later that night, Gavin sat alone again, but not in his penthouse. He was in the test kitchen at Reed Foods, lights dim, a half batch of snickerdoodle dough on the counter. In front of him, Leo's drawing leaned against the spice rack, a visual reminder of what still mattered. He reached for the chai and started baking. One cookie at a time. Not to perfect a recipe, but to rebuild a bond. It was Saturday morning, and Gavin stood behind Leo's cookie booth for the 4th day in a row. This time, he didn't just watch, he worked. Arranging samples, offering napkins, restocking lemon shortbreads without being asked. Leo nudged him. "You're getting good at this." Gavin grinned. "Think there's room for me on the payroll?" Leo teased. "What's your experience with chocolate drizzle?" "I burn it, repeatedly." "Then you're hired." Leo laughed. Julia stood a few feet back, arms folded, but her face had softened. She wasn't smiling exactly, but she wasn't frowning anymore either. Mid-morning, a man in a blazer approached. Tall, sunglasses, flashy smile. "Gavin Reed?" the man said. Gavin turned. "Yes?" "I'm with Juniper Foods. Your assistant said you'd be off the grid, but I figured I'd take a shot. We need your signature by Monday if you're still considering the Asia expansion." Gavin's posture stiffened. Julia looked up from the booth. The man smiled wider. "Big money. All yours. We're talking legacy level. But if it's not your priority..." Leo looked between them. "Asia? Expansion?" Gavin looked at the cookie tin beside him, then at Leo, then at Julia. "I appreciate you coming," Gavin said, "but I'm not interested anymore." The man blinked. "What?" "I said no. I've got something better to invest in." With that, Gavin turned back to the table and gently slid another cookie into the sample tray. The man left, confused. Julia raised an eyebrow. "That deal was everywhere last month." "I know," Gavin said, "but I wasn't." Leo's voice piped up. "You mean you're skipping the $1 billion thing for cookies?" Gavin chuckled. "Not just for cookies, for the kid who makes them, and for the woman who taught him how." Leo looked stunned. "You're really not leaving?" "I'm really not." For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Julia stepped forward, slowly. "He's been working on a new recipe," she said. "Calls it Redemption Bites. Wants to make it his signature." Leo blushed. "It's still a little weird." Gavin leaned in. "Weird's good. I used cardamom and orange zest," Leo said, "and a little molasses. Mom says it tastes like stubbornness and second chances." Gavin smiled. "Sounds like someone I know." Leo reached into a brown paper bag and pulled out a single wrapped cookie. The edges were crisp with a glossy glaze. He handed it to Gavin. "This one's for you." Gavin unwrapped it carefully, like opening something sacred. He took one bite. It was bold, warm, unexpected. It didn't beg for approval. It just was. He looked at Leo. "You made this?" "All by myself." "It's perfect." Leo smiled, then added quietly, "You think maybe, sometime, I could see where you work?" Gavin's throat tightened. "I'd love that." "Cool," Leo said, trying to sound casual, but his grin was impossible to hide. Julia was silent for a moment, then stepped beside Gavin. "You know," she said, "he's never given that cookie to anyone else." Gavin looked down at the half-eaten redemption bite. "I'll save the rest." "You can't," Leo said quickly. "It'll get stale." Gavin looked at him. "Then I'll eat it today, and remember it tomorrow." And he would, not just the taste, but the gesture. The paper wrapping now held more than a cookie. It held trust. He folded it gently and tucked it into his wallet. A small thing. But maybe, just maybe, it meant he was halfway home. Gavin stepped into his office at Reed Foods the following Monday, early light pouring through the tall windows. He hadn't been here all weekend. His absence had sent waves through the executive floor. Waiting at his desk was a silver envelope. No return address, just his name, handwritten. He opened it slowly. Inside was a note. Short. No greeting, no signature. "You're getting too close. You have a company to run, not a fantasy to chase. Don't forget who saved your empire." He stared at the words, his breath catching. Carol. He knew that handwriting. The sharp loops, the cold clarity. He walked to the filing cabinet near the back wall, opened the lowest drawer, and pulled out a locked box. Inside were archived HR reports from 10 years ago, before Reed Foods had exploded in scale. One name stood out. Lila Harmon, Julia's former roommate, once briefly employed at Reed Foods. Terminated, under vague circumstances. Gavin frowned. He hadn't seen that name in years. He grabbed his phone and called security. Pull the digital records on Lila Harmon. Everything. Emails, exit interview, who signed off. A few minutes later, his assistant emailed the file. Gavin opened it. Termination signed by Carol Reed. No reason provided. He exhaled slowly. His sister hadn't just hidden letters, she'd burned bridges. Later that day, Gavin met Julia at her doorstep. She opened the door, brows raised. "You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't," he admitted. "Can we talk?" She nodded and stepped aside. They sat at the small kitchen table, the one with the chipped edges and Leo's doodles scratched beneath. "I found something," Gavin said, "about your old roommate, Lila." Julia stiffened. "What about her?" "She worked here, at Reed Foods, briefly." "I know. She told me Carol had her fired." Gavin nodded. "She didn't just fire her. She erased the record, covered her exit, burned everything that tied you to me." Julia's voice cracked. "Lila was the one who mailed your letters when I couldn't bring myself to go near your building. And Carol made sure she couldn't try again," Gavin whispered. The room fell into a stunned silence. "I trusted her," he said. "She told me you moved on, that you never wanted me to know, and I—" "You believed her," Julia said, her voice low but not bitter. "You always did. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me." He looked around the kitchen. Simple, warm, worn by time and love. This should have been his home too. He'd missed bedtime stories, first day of school, birthday candles. "I can't undo what she took," he said, "but I can stop letting her take more." Julia met his eyes. "What are you going to do?" He pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket. It was Leo's sketch, the one with the cookie stand and 3 figures. He placed it gently on the table. "I'm going to rebuild what matters, and I'm going to start by telling the truth." Just then, the front door opened and Leo bounded in, his backpack thudding against the floor. "Mom, you won't believe what happened. Ms. Carter said I can teach a mini cookie lesson next week at the library." "That's great," Julia said, smiling. Leo turned to Gavin. "You'll come, right? You can be my helper again." Gavin stood and nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." As Leo dashed into the next room, Julia reached across the table, her hand brushing the edge of the drawing. "You're really staying?" Gavin looked her in the eye. "For good," he said, and for the first time, her shoulders eased. Outside, the sky over Seattle turned soft with dusk. Inside, the paper drawing on the table seemed to glow, simple pencil lines, but full of promise. A promise finally being kept. 2 weeks later, the old greenhouse behind Reed Foods stood silent, forgotten, dust-covered glass, panels streaked with rain. But Gavin saw more than neglect. He saw possibility. He walked through the creaking door, trailed by Leo, who stared around with wide eyes. "This place is huge," Leo whispered. "It smells like dirt and dreams." Gavin laughed. "It used to be an herb garden for our test kitchen. Got shut down years ago, but I was thinking—" Leo looked up. "Thinking what?" Gavin knelt beside him. "What if this became your kitchen school? A place where kids like you could learn, bake, maybe even sell cookies at the fair." Leo's jaw dropped. "For real?" "For real," Gavin said. "It'll need work, a lot, but I'll fund it. You design the menu, the lessons. I'll bring in the ovens and tables. You bring the flavor." Leo blinked fast. "Like a baking class for real kids, not just rich ones?" Gavin nodded. "For every kid who ever thought their ideas didn't matter. This place will say they do." Leo tackled him in a hug. "Okay," Gavin laughed. "I guess that's a yes." That night, Julia stood in the back of the greenhouse watching as Gavin wiped grime from an old counter. "You're serious about this?" she asked. "I walked away once," Gavin said. "I won't do it again. Not from you. Not from him. Julia exhaled. Leo's never had someone outside this apartment believe in him like this. He's remarkable, Gavin said. So are you. You built a whole world out of love and sugar. Julia smiled faintly. And stubbornness. That, too, he chuckled. Which is probably why Leo used molasses in that redemption bite. She stepped closer. What about Reed's international launch? I backed out. Carol didn't take it well. Julia folded her arms. She's going to come for you. Let her, Gavin said. This time, I'm not hiding from the truth. The next morning, a crew arrived. Painters, carpenters, and volunteers from the community. Gavin posted a public call. Bakers wanted. No experience needed. Just bring heart. Kids showed up in raincoats, holding mixing bowls. Teenagers came with notebooks. Parents brought extra flour. Julia organized it all like she'd been doing it forever. Leo stood on a stool, holding up a laminated sign that read, Leo's Baking Lab. It was crooked, hand-drawn, full of bright colors and uneven letters. Gavin smiled and nailed it above the doorway. Inside, Gavin unpacked a small metal tin and placed it on a shelf, lined in velvet. Inside was the very first redemption bite Leo had gifted him, vacuum-sealed and preserved. Julia saw him do it and raised an eyebrow. Really? It's our cornerstone, Gavin said. A reminder of what we're building and why. Just then, a small girl with chipped glasses tugged Julia's sleeve. Can I learn how to make lemon cookies? My grandma used to, but she's gone now. Julia knelt beside her, voice gentle. Of course. Come with me. Gavin watched them walk toward the flower bins, and something inside him softened. This wasn't just about Leo, or Julia, or himself. It was about all the children who needed a place to be heard. A place to taste hope. As sunlight poured through the glass roof, the flower dust swirled in the golden rays, and the scent of dough and vanilla filled the air. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And finally, it was his. The bake fair was packed, sunlight bouncing off striped tents and the scent of cinnamon floating in the air. Gavin stood beside Leo at their booth, now proudly labeled Leo's Baking Lab, the crooked sign from the greenhouse tied to the top. Children swarmed the table, tasting samples, asking questions. Gavin poured lemonade. Julia managed the cash box. Leo gave out cookies with confidence and flair. This one's called a second chance snap, Leo told a young boy. It's crunchy on the outside but soft in the middle, like my mom. Julia raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Leo grinned. You know, tough, but sweet. Gavin laughed. You nailed it, kid. Leo turned to him, eyes sparkling. Want to do the honors? Gavin blinked. What do you mean? Leo reached into a small tin under the table. From inside, he pulled out a single, round cookie, golden brown, a swirl of chocolate across the top in the shape of a G. I made this one for you, Leo said. It's called the forgiveness cookie. Gavin took it slowly, hands trembling. You baked this? For me? Leo nodded. Mom helped, but I picked the flavors. Salted caramel and orange zest. She said those were in the cake you liked. Gavin's voice softened. You remembered? Leo shrugged. You said you used to sneak extra slices at birthdays. Figured you'd like it. Gavin bit into it. Sweet, tangy, warm, and something else, something deeper, like a memory being restored. It's perfect, Gavin said, voice catching. Thank you. Julia stood beside them, arms folded but eyes glistening. He's been working on that all week. I can taste the heart in it, Gavin said, then turned to her. And I see the heart in him. It's you. Julia looked down, then smiled. Maybe it's both of us now. Later that afternoon, as the crowd thinned and the sun dipped low, Julia walked up to Gavin by the lemonade cooler. Can we talk? She asked. He followed her behind the tent where it was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and far-off music from the stage. "I've been thinking," Julia said, "about everything you've done. For Leo. For this." Gavin stayed silent, giving her space. "I didn't expect it," she continued, "and I didn't know if I could trust it. But then, I saw you teaching that little girl how to pipe icing yesterday, and I saw his face." Gavin looked at her. "I meant it, Julia. Every part of it." She nodded. "And maybe it's time I believed it." He stepped closer. "What are you saying?" Julia took a breath. "I'm saying if you still want to be part of his life, really be in it, not just for the fair or the kitchen, then I'm ready to let that happen." Gavin swallowed. "I do, more than anything." Julia smiled. "Then let's try. Not rush, not rewind, just try." He reached out gently and took her hand. Leo peeked around the corner at just that moment. "Hey, you two done with the serious stuff? We've still got ginger cookies to sell." They both laughed. "Be right there, chef," Gavin called. Leo disappeared with a grin. Julia looked down at their hands, still joined, and didn't pull away. "Guess the booth needs all hands on deck," she said. Gavin nodded. "Let's go." Back at the table, Leo handed Gavin a tiny, folded piece of paper. Gavin opened it. It was a drawing, crayon this time. 3 figures, side by side. Gavin, Julia, and Leo. Above them, a banner read, "Family Bakery Forever." Gavin's eyes welled. Not because of what they'd lost, but because of what they were still building. One bite, one truth, one brave cookie at a time. The sun dipped low over Seattle, casting golden light through the glass walls of the greenhouse-turned-baking school. Inside, the room buzzed with kids kneading dough, measuring sugar, laughing between lessons. Gavin stood at the back counter beside Leo, guiding him through a new recipe. "This one's special," Leo said, carefully cracking an egg. "I call it home dough. It's soft, kinda sweet, a little messy, but it sticks together." Gavin smiled. "Sounds familiar." Leo grinned, then paused. "Think Mom'll like it?" "She'll love it," Gavin said, "especially if we don't burn the bottoms." Leo chuckled. "No promises." Across the room, Julia taught a group of girls how to swirl frosting with spoons instead of fancy piping bags. Her eyes occasionally drifted toward Gavin and Leo, quietly watching, her expression soft. Then came a knock on the greenhouse door. Carol, dressed in gray slacks, sharp blazer, phone in hand. The buzz of the room dimmed as eyes turned toward her. "Gavin," she said coolly, "can we speak?" Gavin met her in the doorway, stepping outside. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I just came from the board," she replied. "They're worried. You've pulled out of the international deal. You're pouring money into this." She gestured toward the greenhouse. "Cookies and coloring books? You've gone soft." "No," Gavin said calmly. "I've gone human." Carol crossed her arms. "You're risking the company for what? Some kid with a recipe binder?" Gavin's jaw tightened. "That kid is my son." Her face flickered. "You're letting emotion cloud your judgment." "I'm letting love inform my future," he said. "Big difference." Carol stepped closer, voice low. "You're throwing away everything we built. Everything I protected. For you." "Protected?" Gavin's voice rose. "You destroyed letters, fired people, lied. You didn't protect me, you controlled me. You weren't ready to be a father," Carol snapped. "You never gave me the choice." Silence hung between them. Gavin took a breath. "I'm not signing the Asia deal, and if the board wants me out, fine. I'll walk away. But I'm not walking away from my son." Carol's eyes narrowed. "You'd throw the company away for a cookie?" Gavin didn't blink. "For that cookie," he said, holding up the wrapped redemption bite Leo had made, still kept in his coat pocket. "Every time I look at this, I remember what I almost lost, and what I'm building now." Carol scoffed. "You're a fool." "No," he said, "I'm finally not." She turned without another word and walked away. Gavin stepped back inside. Julia approached. "Everything okay?" He nodded. "She's gone." Julia studied his face. "And what did she say?" "That I'm throwing everything away." "And are you?" He looked around the room. The kids learning, Leo proudly mixing dough, a grandmother helping two boys with flour-dusted fingers. "No," Gavin whispered. "I'm finally getting it right." Just then, Leo called out, "Dad, come taste!" The room went quiet. It was the first time he'd said it like that, in public, confident, without fear. Gavin smiled, heart thudding, and walked over. Leo held up a warm, golden cookie. "I used your idea," Leo said. "Brown sugar, touch of cinnamon, and one secret." "What's the secret?" Leo leaned close. "I made it thinking about us." Gavin took a bite. Sweet, gentle, honest. "It's the best thing I've ever tasted," he said. Leo beamed. Julia wiped at the corner of her eye. And in that moment, with flour in the air and sunlight on their faces, the taste of redemption was real, tangible, and sweet, just like the cookie. The morning was cold and gray, but inside the greenhouse kitchen, warmth radiated from every corner. Kids rolled dough, piped frosting, and giggled as flour puffed into the air like tiny clouds. Gavin stood near the back, reviewing renovation plans for the expanded kitchen. Next to him, Leo sketched on a legal pad, another cookie design labeled Family Spice. But his piece was interrupted by a sharp knock at the side door. It was Marcus, the Reed Foods compliance officer. Clean suit, furrowed brow. "I didn't want to say this on a call," Marcus murmured, "but you need to see this." Gavin stepped outside with him. The wind whipped through the alley. Marcus handed him a manila folder. "We've been reviewing old staff records and financial logs." Gavin flipped through, confused. "What am I looking at?" "Your sister," Marcus said quietly. Carol authorized private payments to a woman named Sherry Langdon, former social worker, paid monthly, under consulting services. Gavin froze. Sherry's name came up in an HR complaint. Someone overheard her saying she kept a man from a child for a good price. The pages blurred. "Julia filed for state assistance 10 years ago," Marcus added. "That request mysteriously disappeared, right after a home visit from Sherry Langdon." Gavin's voice cracked. "She was paid to interfere." Marcus nodded grimly. "By your sister, to ensure you never knew Leo existed." Gavin's heart thundered. "Where is she now?" "She retired. Lives an hour out, but I have an address." That evening, Gavin sat across from Julia at her kitchen table, his hands gripping the folder. "She didn't just lie to me," he said. "She sabotaged you, hired someone to stop the truth from ever reaching me." Julia's eyes narrowed as she read. "This is why I was denied help. I thought it was just the system." "No," Gavin whispered. "It was Carol." Julia looked at him. "You still going to protect her?" "No," he said. "I'm going to expose her." Just then, Leo entered the room, holding up a gingerbread man. "Look, I made this one look like you." Gavin forced a smile. "Beard and all?" Leo nodded. "Except I made the heart bigger." Julia's breath caught. Gavin stood and knelt beside his son. "Leo, I want you to know something. There are people who didn't want me to find you, who tried to keep us apart." Leo looked confused. "Why?" "Because they thought they knew what was best," Gavin said. "But they didn't. Only we get to decide what kind of family we are." Leo nodded slowly. "We're one that bakes cookies and tells the truth." Gavin smiled. "Exactly." The next morning, Gavin held a press conference on the steps of Reed Foods. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward. "My name is Gavin Reed," he began, "and for years my company thrived, while the truth about my own family was buried. I trusted people I shouldn't have. I was kept from my son by actions that were not only unethical, but deeply personal." He held up the forgiveness cookie Leo had made, wrapped in clear cellophane. "This cookie," he said, "changed everything. It reminded me that redemption doesn't come through profit or power, but through honesty, action, and love." He took a breath. "I've begun legal proceedings against Carol Reed for corporate abuse and personal obstruction. I don't make this decision lightly, but protecting my son's future means confronting the past." Behind him, Julia and Leo watched quietly, hands clasped. When he stepped away from the mic, Leo ran up and hugged him tight. "You did it," Leo whispered. "You told the world." Gavin squeezed back. "Now we make it better." And as the cameras clicked and questions flew, Gavin felt something he hadn't in years. Not pride, not power. Peace, hard-won, and finally earned. The ribbon fluttered in the wind as Leo held the oversized scissors with both hands, tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth. "Ready?" Gavin asked, crouching beside him. Leo nodded. "Can I say something first?" Julia smiled from the crowd. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Leo turned to the dozen reporters and community members gathered in front of the newly built brick building, a sign overhead reading, "The Hearth, a community kitchen for kids." "My name's Leo," he said, voice wavering but proud. "And this place is for any kid who wants to bake, even if they don't have an oven, even if no one believed in them before." He looked at Gavin, then Julia. Now they've got people who do. Applause rippled through the group as Gavin gently helped him cut the ribbon. Inside, sunlight spilled through wide windows onto rows of stainless steel counters. Mixing bowls, apron hooks, posters Leo had drawn lined the walls. Cartoon cookies smiling with captions like, "One whisk at a time." At the far end, a long table held dozens of ingredients. Kids from the neighborhood stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting for the first class to begin. Gavin handed out name tags. Julia passed out recipe cards. Leo rang a tiny bell. "Okay, first lesson, snickerdoodles." The room erupted in laughter and energy. Gavin stepped back, watching the room with quiet awe. "What are you thinking?" Julia asked, appearing beside him. "That this is the best thing I've ever been a part of," he said, "and that it never would have happened without a 10-year-old yelling, 'Dad, taste this,' in the park." She nudged him. "And what are you going to do next?" He pointed to a corner where a shy girl stood alone, holding a bag of flour. "I think I'll go show her how to cream butter." That night, the kitchen quieted. The last batch of cookies cooled on wire racks. Leo sat at the main table, scribbling in his baking journal. "What's today's entry?" Gavin asked, wiping his hands on a towel. Leo flipped it around. A sketch of the kitchen. 3 figures. Him, Julia, and Gavin, all wearing aprons, laughing. "I named the kitchen Hearth because Mom says it means more than heat. It means home." Gavin swallowed hard. "It's perfect." Leo shrugged. "It's just a drawing." "No," Gavin said. "It's a future." Julia walked over, handing Gavin a sealed envelope. "What's this?" She smiled softly. "It's the final paperwork. I already signed it." He opened it. Custody agreement. Joint. Equal. Trust-based. His voice caught. "Are you sure? I watched you put your entire heart into something. Not for business, but for people. For Leo. You didn't just show up. You stayed. You chose him, again and again." He looked at her, eyes wet. "I'll never stop." "I know," she said. "That's why it's time." Leo popped up between them, grinning. "Can we celebrate with cinnamon rolls?" Gavin laughed. You rid my mind. Later that night, after Leo was tucked in, Gavin stood in the empty greenhouse, now cleaned and dark, save for one spotlight. He walked to the old wooden shelf where he kept Leo's first redemption bite cookie, sealed in glass. Next to it, he placed something new, a bronze plaque, freshly engraved, for the kid who changed everything, and the cookie that started it all. He stepped back, stared at both. The symbol was simple, a bite-sized miracle. But to Gavin, it marked the day everything had shifted. Not just his career, not just his name, his heart. And it had never felt more full. The park bustled with energy. Banners swayed in the breeze, music drifted from a nearby stage, and rows of vendor tents spilled over with baked goods, crafts, and laughter. But all eyes seemed drawn to one booth. Leo's baking lab stood at the center, bright with color and handmade signs. A chalkboard read, "Try our new family spice rolls, created by Leo, baked by Julia, approved by Gavin." Behind the table, the trio worked as one. Julia moved gracefully, handing out warm cookies and greeting familiar faces. Gavin, sleeves rolled, took payments and grinned like he'd done this his whole life. And Leo? He wore his custom apron with pride, head cookie officer stitched in bold blue thread. "Try this one!" Leo shouted, holding out a sample to a couple walking past. "It's got nutmeg and a hint of orange zest." The woman smiled. "Did you bake this?" "With my family," Leo said confidently. "We all did it together." A man nearby whispered to his wife, "Isn't that Gavin Reed, the CEO?" His wife replied, "Yeah, but he looks happier here than I've ever seen him in the news." As the afternoon sun dipped low, Gavin stepped away briefly and returned with something in his hands. A white cake box. He opened it in front of Leo and Julia to reveal a perfect stack of redemption bite cookies, baked just the way Leo had first made them. On top, a sugar-crafted banner read, "Day 1 forever." Julia raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" Gavin smiled. "Our relaunch. A new family recipe. Leo's idea, my marketing, your heart." Leo beamed. "It's going to be on shelves next month. We're donating half the profits to the community kitchen." Julia blinked, stunned. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Gavin said. "The world needs more second chances, and cookies that taste like one." Leo clapped his hands. "Let's give out the first ones now." Gavin reached under the table and handed Leo a simple wooden tray, stained with care, carved along the edge with little flourishes. On the underside it read, "For Dad, the one who stayed." Leo whispered, "I made this in shop class. Ms. Clara helped." Gavin's throat tightened. "It's beautiful." Julia placed her hand gently on Gavin's. "He's proud of you." "I'm proud of him," Gavin said, voice low, "and of us." As dusk painted the sky in warm oranges and soft purples, lights flickered on around the park. The smell of cinnamon, butter, and caramel drifted through the air. And in the middle of it all, the three of them baked, laughing, sharing stories, teaching kids how to fold dough and drizzle icing. "Look what I made, Dad," Leo called, holding up a cookie shaped like a star. Gavin took it, broke it in half, and shared it with him. "Perfect." A child nearby tugged Julia's apron. "Can I join your baking lab?" Julia smiled. "Absolutely. Everyone's welcome." More kids gathered, some curious, some shy, all drawn to the warmth of something real. As the fair came to a close, Leo climbed atop the table and rang his tiny bell one last time. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for tasting. And remember, family isn't just who you're born with, it's who bakes beside you." Cheers erupted. Gavin swept Leo into a hug and Julia joined, arms wrapping around them both. In that moment, Flour on their sleeves, sugar on their fingertips, and laughter in their lungs, they were no longer fragments of a broken past. They were a recipe rewritten. And as the final light faded from the sky, one thing was clear. The flavors of family had found their way home.